No Man Has a Right to Own Mountains, Chapter 2. You were right about wrapping up warm, Grandad. Just wait till we get a bit higher, Rosie. You always need to be prepared for the worst on Kinder, whatever time of year you come. They were walking up the narrow tree-lined lane called, rather inappropriately, Kinder Road, for it was barely wide enough for 2 motor vehicles. They'd just passed the Sportsman pub, where Grandad had promised to treat Rosie to a slap-up meal. On their right was a campsite, empty apart from 2 lone tents side by side, as if huddled together for warmth. The sight of them had triggered the youngster's imagination. "Have you got a tent, Grandad?" "Aye, lass. Why'd you ask?" "I was just thinking it would be nice to camp up here." "It's a bit too cold for that at this time of year, me love." "But we could come in the spring, couldn't we? It would be wonderful. We could come up on a Friday night and spend all weekend exploring and having all kinds of adventures." "Would you like that, Rosie?" "Yes, I really would, Grandad." She tightened her grip on the old man's hand momentarily and looked up at him, a mischievous smile on her face. "Providing you were with me, I know I'm safe with you, Grandad, and I love your stories. You bring everything to life." He chuckled at the idea, but his old eyes were watering, and it wasn't down to the cold stiff breeze, a southwesterly, and blowing on their backs. He looked up to the towering mass that was the southwest flank of Kinder. His mind went back in time to his own youth, to the time when he too had first discovered the magic of this place, the day he'd met Josie, the girl who was to become his sweetheart, his lover, his wife, and the mother of their 2 children. She'd had the same rich, dark brown hair, almost black, as young Rosie had now, and the same eyes, the sharp, clear blue of a blackbird's eggshell. They seemed to have spent a greater proportion of their leisure time, what little they had, that is, up here and over the other side of Kinder in Edale, than they'd spent back home. Over the years they'd explored the surrounding areas of the Dark Peak, and sometimes the limestone areas of the White Peak. They'd done it on a shoestring budget, because they never had any money in quantity. But who needs money when you have the power of your own legs, a canvas shelter, good sleeping bags, stout boots, and warm clothing, with some of the most inspiring countryside in Britain on your doorstep, and the determination to enjoy it? There are pleasures in life no amounts of money can buy, and all too often such simple delights remain hidden from those with too much wealth. When Bill had been born, and 2 years later Alice, Rosie's mum, they'd had to make adjustments, but not too many. The kids had accompanied them long before they could walk, and they'd thrived as a result. "Grandad," Rosie's treble voice broke into his reverie. "Yes, my love." "Is it far to the battleground?" "Not really. It's just up William Clough, but I've something else to show you first." They now left the lower cultivated land behind. The green, close-cropped grass, grazed by the ever-present and ever-bleating sheep, had given way to coarse tussock grass, with patches of heather and ling. The old man stopped in his tracks. "Here, Rosie, let me lift yous up on top wall." He bent down, placing his gnarled old hands beneath her armpits, and lifted her bodily, swinging her legs over the dry stone wall, and then perching her top with a grunt as he exhaled breath. She leant back against him, feeling the need for security, as the large stone slab she found herself perched on rocked slightly beneath her. He pointed straight ahead to the eastern end of the soaring mass of greeny-brown hillside, soaring up to the jagged gritstone edge, with its black, rugged wind and rain-sculptured, ice-shattered rocks, silhouetted dark and glowering against the grey October morning sky. "That's Kinder Low End. Kinder Low's the highest point for miles around, 2,077 feet above sea level at its peak," Grandad announced. She gazed in wonder across the wild landscape, conscious of the silence broken only by the brown, peat-stained waters of the fast-rushing, gurgling stream, known as the River Set, which lay immediately below her at this point, and the soft sough of the late autumn wind, with its chilly promise of approaching winter. "Why is it called a low, Grandad, when it's so high up? It doesn't make sense." "I think it's a Norse word, Rosie, meaning a burial place. Some long-forgotten chieftain was probably buried there. Just on t'other side at Low and below it, there's an old pack-horse road that connects Hayfield to Edale. There's an old stone cross marking boundary. Edale Cross it's called. That's where I first set eyes on your grandma." "Oh, can we go there?" "Not today, Rosie, we won't have time, but we could go next weekend if your mam'll let us." "I'm sure she will, Grandad. Maybe we can get her to come." "See if you can. She spends too much time in th' house fretting o'er stuff that's of no real importance. It'll do her good. She's been moping about ever since Dad were killed. I'm always trying to cheer her up, Grandad." "I know, love. She's taking it hard, but that's why we need to get out at th' house. Give her a new perspective on life. She used to love coming up here. Anyway, let's get you off that wall afore you become part of it. We'll soon be where Trespass began." No sooner said than done. With the old man's help to turn herself on the wall without falling into the river below, Rosie was back on terra firma and walking up the lane. The tarmac ran out and the lane became a rough track. Here they turned left into the entrance of an old abandoned quarry, its sheer gritstone walls forming an amphitheatre cut into the hillside. "This is where we started from. See that big rock, Rosie?" He pointed and she nodded. "That's where Benny Rothman made a short speech explaining the route we should take. There are over 400 of us, lads and lasses, from th' engineering and textile towns of Manchester, Salford and Stockport, many of 'em unemployed, with little prospect of work. It were 1932, a lean year among starvation years for working folk. They call 'em th' hungry 30s now. Anyhow, work or no work, we were all united in a common cause, the fight for the freedom to roam, to force our right to at least to be able to enjoy the delights that nature provides free of charge, fresh air and blue sky, wind and rain, instead of the muck, grime and filthy smoke we had to cope with in the towns." Rosie remained quiet, taking in her surroundings, overawed by the mass of moorland sweeping upwards above the quarry. The old man had also gone quiet, his mind travelling back in time to Sunday, April the 24th, almost 58 years before, when he was a mere lad of 19 summers. A pair of chattering jackdaws, high up on the gritstone rock face to their right, interrupted both their thoughts. "Aye, Rosie, such a simple demand of freedom to roam. Little did we know the real extent of the forces ranged against us. Come on, lass, let me show you what we were after." She took his hand in hers. "I'm glad you brought me, Grandad. It's such a wonderful place." "There's lots more yet, lass." They resumed their way up the rutted track to a point where it split in two. Grandad branched left, and they began to climb, a large patch of shimmering water, a small lake, on their right-hand side. "That's Kinder Reservoir, Rosie, built to provide clean pure water to people of Stockport way back in 1899 by Stockport Borough Corporation. Took 9 years to build. Manchester Corporation built its first reservoir not too far away from here, in th' Longdendale Valley, in th' 1850s. Ted Heath handed 'em over to a regional water board in 1970s, and that she-wolf Thatcher privatised 'em this year. So we have water thieves to contend with as well as land thieves. Grandad, it's not good to get angry at your age. At least that's what Mum says. Anger's a perfectly natural emotion when injustice takes place, Rosie. Trouble with your mum is she bottles it up." He looked down at the girl and then laughed. "Ha ha, I do get a bit excited, don't I, lass? But the fact is, the system stinks. If they could bottle up the very air we breathe, They would, and then they'd force us to buy it off 'em, and that's a fact. They're nowt but thieves and money grubbers.